Okay, so picture this. A huge epic conflict is just about to kick off. Armies are facing each other. Tensions are incredibly high. You can almost feel it.
Yeah, the calm before the storm, sort of.
Exactly. And the very first words we hear, they aren't from the heroes, not Arjuna, not Krishna, not even the villains, really.
Mm,
They're from this worried blind king, asking what seems like a really simple question.
right.
So today, that's what we're doing. We're diving deep into just those first two lines, the very first shloka, the Bhagwat Geeta. It's ancient, hugely influential.
Absolutely foundational.
And our mission really is to try and unpack all the meaning packed in there. The moral stuff, the psychology, the spirituality, it's all hinted at right from the start.
It really sets the stage, doesn't it?
It does. We'll look at who's talking, where they are, the biases you can already pick up on, and why this question, which sounds so straightforward, actually kicks off the whole philosophical journey.
And we'll be drawing on some, classic commentaries too, like from Adi Shankaracharya and Swami Chinmayananda, to get different perspectives.
Great. Okay, let's set the scene then. The Bhagavad Gita. It's this ancient Indian scripture, basically a dialogue, right? Taking place on a battlefield just before this massive war starts.
The Kurukshetra War.
Exactly. And that first verse was chapter 1, shloka 1. The English translation goes something like, Dhrutarastra said, O Sanjaya, assembled in the holy land of Kurukshetra and desirous of battle, what did my sons and the sons of Pandu do?
Mm-hmm. And it's worth just hearing the sound of the original Sanskrit too. It has a certain weight. The Dharatavlacha Dharmakatra Kurutetra Samavita Yutsava Mamaka Attacha Bikamakurvata Sanyaya.
Yeah, hearing the Sanskrit, it just feels ancient, profound. Okay, so let's unpack this. The speaker is King Dhritarashtra.
Right. The blind king, father of the Kauravas, one side of the conflict.
And what's his role here? He's not actually on the battlefield fighting, is he?
No, that's crucial. He's back in the palace, blind, relying on Sanjaya, who has been granted divine vision to tell him what's happening. Sanjaya is his charioteer, but here he's acting as a kind of remote narrator.
Okay, so he's removed from the action. And his blindness, you mentioned it's symbolic.
And deeply symbolic, yes. It's not just that he can't physically see. The tradition often interprets this as representing a kind of moral and spiritual blindness, too.
Sure.
He consistently, turned a blind eye to the injustices his sons were committing, to the principles of dharma or righteousness. And that refusal to see what was right is arguably what led everyone to this battlefield.
So his physical state reflects his ethical state. His inability to see the battlefield mirrors his failure to see justice.
Wow. It sets up this theme of seeing versus blindness, knowledge versus ignorance right from the very beginning.
Okay, and that brings us to the where, the location, Kurukshetra.
Yeah.
But it's got this double name in the verse, right?
Okay.
Dharmakshetra and Kurukshetra.
Yes, exactly. Kurukshetra is, the field or land of the Kurus, the dynasty they belong to. That's the geographical, historical name.
Makes sense.
But calling it Dharmakshetra, that's loaded with meaning. Dharma means righteousness, duty, cosmic law. So it's the field of righteousness.
So it's not just any battlefield. It's explicitly framed as a place where dharma is going to be contested, decided almost.
Precisely. It immediately elevates the conflict beyond a mere political squabble or land grab. It signals that this is a battle with profound moral and spiritual stakes. It's happening on the field of dharma.
Is this just a physical place then, or more like a metaphor?
Well, Swami Chinmayananda, for instance, really emphasizes this duality. Kurukshetra was a real place, yes, but it also symbolizes the inner battlefield within each of us.
The inner battlefield.
Yeah, the struggle between our own positive and negative tendencies, our sense of duty versus our selfish desires, good versus evil playing out inside the human heart, you could say. So this external war reflects an internal universal human struggle.
So, the setting itself is telling us this story operates on multiple levels. External conflict, internal struggle. Okay. Now, let's look closer at how Dhritarashtra asks his question. The wording seems specific.
Very specific.
Yeah.
And very revealing.
He says, Mamako, my sons, referring to his own side, the Kauravas, and then Patava, the sons of Pandu, referring to his nephews, the Pandavas.
Notice what he doesn't say. He doesn't say our children or the warriors or even just the Kauravas and the Pandavas.
It immediately creates this division, mine versus them.
Exactly. Mamako, mine. It drips with attachment, with bias. He sees his sons as extensions of himself and the Pandavas as also, the other side, even though they're family.
That favoritism, that sense of me and mine,
Yeah.
is that seen as a root cause of the whole problem?
Absolutely. Many commentators like Adi Shankaracharya point this out. They suggest Dhritarashtra's mind is clouded, disturbed by doubt and this very attachment, this inability to be impartial, this ego-driven perspective. It's presented as the seed from which the entire conflict grew.
It's quite powerful, showing how that fundamental human tendency towards mind can lead to such catastrophic outcomes.
It really sets up a core theme of the Gita, the need to overcome attachment and ego.
Okay, so we have the blind, biased king asking from afar about this battle on the field of righteousness. And his actual question is, what did they do? Kimakarvata.
Yeah. Kimakarvata Sanyaya. What did they do, O Sanjaya?
Which, on the surface, sounds, well, almost naive, doesn't it? You've got these massive armies they've assembled specifically for battle. They're desirous of battle, as the verse says.
Right. What else would they be doing? Setting up a picnic.
Exactly. It seems like a rhetorical question, almost absurd. So what's the psychological insight here? Why ask something so obvious?
Well, it likely reveals his deep-seated anxiety, his fear, maybe even a sliver of denial, or perhaps a desperate hidden hope.
Hope for what?
Maybe hope that despite everything, despite the armies being right there, maybe something happened. Maybe they reconsidered. Maybe the sacredness of the place, the Dharmashetra, had some effect, and they decided not to fight after all.
Ah, so it's not genuine ignorance, but more like wishful thinking, a reluctance to face the reality of the war he helped create.
Exactly. He knows what they should be doing, what they're prepared to do, but maybe he's clinging to a faint possibility that the inevitable hasn't actually started. He fears the consequences, especially for his sons.
That adds another layer to his character. Not just biased, but also fearful and perhaps unwilling to accept the consequences of his own past inaction and favoritism.
It shows the internal turmoil. He let things get to this point, but now that the moment is here, he's deeply worried.
Okay, so just from this one verse, these 2 lines, we're already touching on some massive philosophical themes that the rest of the Gita will explore, aren't we?
Definitely. It's like an overture, hitting all the main notes.
What are some of the big ones you see introduced right here?
Well, first and foremost, as we discussed, dharma versus adharma. Righteousness versus unrighteousness. The setting itself, Dharmakutra, throws this into sharp relief. The whole dialogue is framed by this fundamental conflict.
Okay, that's clear. What else?
Second, the theme of attachment and ego, embodied by Dhritarashtra's Mamako, my sons. His bias immediately flags this as a central problem, a source of suffering and conflict. The Gita will spend a lot of time teaching how to overcome this.
Right, the idea of detachment, acting without being attached to the results, especially results tied to me and mine.
Precisely. And third, maybe a bit more subtly, his question, what did they do? Hints at this tension between, let's say, fate or destiny and human action or free will.
How so?
Well, the armies are assembled, war seems inevitable, almost destined. Yet he asks what they did, as if their actions, their choices in that moment still matter, still could change things. It touches on that perennial twadan. Are things predetermined, or do our choices shape the outcome? The Gita dives deep into this complex relationship between action, duty, and destiny.
Wow. Dharma, attachment, free will versus fate, all packed into the opening question from a blind king. It's incredibly dense.
It really is.
And thinking dramatically. Why? Start here. Why not with Arjuna's crisis or Krishna's first words? Why is it significant that the whole epic dialogue kicks off with Dhritarashtra?
It's a brilliant narrative choice, I think. Starting with Dhritarashtra, the figure whose moral blindness and attachment caused the conflict immediately establishes the problem.
Sets the stage for the solution.
Exactly. It builds anticipation. We hear the worry, the bias, the fear from the person furthest removed, physically and ethically, from the clarity that's needed. It highlights the darkness, the confusion, the blindness that Krishna's subsequent teachings are meant to dispel.
So it frames the entire Gita as an answer to the kind of suffering and conflict that Dhritarashtra represents and has fostered.
Yes, it starts with the symptom, the root cause personified, before moving to the cure, the wisdom offered to Arjuna, who is on the battlefield, ready to act but confused about how.
Okay, so let's try and pull this together. Just these 2 lines, the first shloka. What have we really learned? It seems simple on the surface, but it's anything but.
No, it's incredibly rich. It opens up this deep well, doesn't it? Morally, psychologically, spiritually, it frames the entire Gita.
Yeah, it immediately throws us into the core issues. The nature of dharma, the danger of attachment and ego through Dhritarashtra's own words, and this underlying tension between what seems fated and what human beings choose to do.
It masterfully sets the scene, introduces the core conflicts, both external and internal, and embodies the very problems the Gita seeks to address. A remarkably concise and powerful opening.
It really is. So as we wrap up this part of our dive, maybe a thought for everyone listening. You might wonder, okay, ancient battlefield, blind king, how does this connect to my life today?
It's a fair question.
Consider that Kurukshetra within you. Those inner struggles we all have, the times we feel pulled between what we feel is our duty, our dharma, and our own personal attachments or fears.
The internal Dharmakashetra.
Exactly. Where do you notice your own biases? Maybe that subtle mind versus theirs thinking. What's the field of dharma you find yourself navigating right now in your work, your family, your own mind?
And perhaps what wisdom might this ancient text offer for those very real, very present inner battles and decisions?
Yeah, something to maybe just ponder on until our next deep dive.